See, this is what it should be like right here. Just go down through there in about 7 foot of water where the wind blew yesterday and throw a little minnow. Skinny. He ate it though. He ate the bait like you want him to eat the bait. I just about threw my pliers in. So we're out here. If you look at the leaves on the trees, you would think dead set fall. Fish are just crushing your bait. You can throw whatever you want. Just pick up a spinner bait and go down the bank. And it's just not the case. It's one of them deals where summer just won't go away. I mean, we're about to bust over into November and the water temperature is still almost 70. And over the years, one thing that I've learned is when you get in the fall like this, it can be, the early fall, it can be super tough. And the reason is they're just scattered. I mean, you got a few fish up on the bank, you got a few fish in the mid-range, and then you got a few fish, a lot of fish out there, you know, schooling, chasing bait and stuff like that. And to me, the whole key is this time of year is bait. Like in the spring, in the winter, you can have the best structure and there'll be fish around it. And right now, it's this time of year, it's not the case. Bait's number one, and then structure's next. I mean, we all know now with live scope, there can be hundreds of fish just out here in these guts and all underneath bait. So, and one thing that's kind of the common denominator is you can look on the top of the water. There's a bunch of bait, but it's all little bitty. And I mean, I like to throw big baits as much as anybody does. But it just seems like this time of year, especially whenever it hasn't broke over. I mean, we got shorts on when it hasn't broke over into that, like just easy fishing, I'll call it. You can get a lot more bites on these smaller baits, you know, and I mean, I got every bait up here for the most part, other than that Pop R is just a smaller bait, and what it is they just get so keyed in on one little bitty thing. I mean, they just bust through it and stuff, these little bitty shad, and I've thrown big baits and stuff, and you can catch some, don't get me wrong, but you just get a lot more bites on these little baits. So, you know, this morning I tied this boyo on, which, you know, we've caught some fish over that, you know, this year on the filming, and I have in tournaments and stuff like that. But I mean, you can see it's really not even as small as the bait is. Where'd that come from? Yeah, they want something. They want something little. We're gonna try to feed them something little. I just thought I'd start, you know, the morning up here shallow and see if I could catch a big one or a smallmouth or something like that. And then once that sun gets up right there, we're gonna go see if we can catch them around some bait. Try to find some schools of them chasing. See, this is what it should be like right here. Just go down through there in about 7 foot of water where the wind blew yesterday and throw a little minnow. That's what it should be like, but it's not always like that. Barely hooked here. All right, buddy. Something got a hold of him. All right, that's what we're gonna do for a little bit. That's what it should be. I think I just fished a couple stretches that just didn't have any fish on them. You know, one of the things that makes the fall, especially this early fall, it makes it so tough is just the, you know, the inconsistency of it. I mean, a guy thinks, well, you know, I went fishing on Wednesday and they were on docks and I threw my little jig and I caught a bunch of them. I'm gonna go back on Thursday, and you go back on Thursday and you don't catch anything. And then maybe Friday it's the same, or maybe Wednesday morning you fish there and you come back in the afternoon and there's nothing. And the reason is it's all about the bait. This bait this time of year, it moves around a lot. You know, these fish they're not really living on anything. They're swimming around, they're eating. And that's what makes it tough, because it just changes. Not only does it change from day to day, but it can change from morning to afternoon. And that's the thing for me, like I always just like to get baits on. You'll hardly ever see me in the fall drag baits around like and I'm not saying you can't catch them, a jig or a drop shot or, you know, something like that. I'm always just moving and covering water until you find a concentration of them. And you know, over the years, fishing this time of year, I've learned one thing is there's a lot of water that doesn't have many fish in it. And, you know, I may fish for 2 or 3 hours and, you know, not catch much, and you'll find one section, or you'll find an area that's got a bunch of bait, or a back of a creek, or you know, you'll just find something where, you know, it's just like a different lake. You went from not catching anything to being able to catch quite a few. So that's why, you know, I always just like to cover a bunch of water. And, you know, I'm looking out here with live scope and stuff, but I'm also, whenever I'm not seeing nothing, I'm just casting at the bank and rocks and things like that, because, you know, there can be one anywhere. What'll happen is, and I didn't really know it before live scope, but, you know, in the afternoons, a lot of this bait gets up high, and that's whenever they get to pushing them towards the top and you can see them. Well, now you can see it with live scope, and the same thing happens in the mornings or at low light. You know, they're still pushing them around and stuff, but it all happens underwater where you can't see it with your eyes. You gotta use live scope, and that's what's, even though this time of year can be tough, it's what's made it better, is you can see, you know, you can follow them around once you find them. You still got to find them and you still got to catch them, but it does make it easier whenever you do get around them. You can see what's going on. You know, back in the day, I'd be out here this time of year on this lake burning a spinnerbait. And I'm just telling you, times have changed where, I mean, you can still catch some doing it, but so this is kind of the same thing. This is just a, you know, Great Lakes finesse drop dead minnow, which is, I mean, super small. It's that color that those minnows get this time of year. And then the Great Lakes, it's underspin there. And I'm doing the same thing that I would be 10, 15 years ago. Like, I'm just reeling it up high, but it's just a smaller bait. The water's just clear this year, and, you know, the clearer it gets, the more you gotta do stuff like that. downsize the bait and just do stuff different than a lot of the other guys are doing. I mean, you can see, I mean, it's windy and I can see 8 or 9 foot deep. So these fish can see it. If they want it, they'll come get it. And that's the good thing is I mean, I've caught crappie, I've caught white bass, I've caught a smallmouth, 2, 3 smallmouth, and a lot of them have hit it. So a lot of those fish are liking the size of the bait and the color. We just got to find the right area and the right stretch. As the day goes on, that bait will get blown up there closer to the bank. And even not on the bank, like back in these pockets and stuff, you know, they'll get pushed out there in the middle in the guts of them and stuff. It will just concentrate a lot of the bait and a lot of the fish, and we ought to be able to get some bites then. Good one. Old brown head, I bet you. It's not that big, he's just mean. Look how pretty that one is. It's like a rattlesnake. They're up there dirt shallow. It's just the same thing like back in the day. Instead of burning, like I said, instead of burning a spinnerbait, I'm really just throwing this thing out. I mean, this thing's really made to, like, you know, for smallmouth. It's made for anything. Just like a steady, but I'm actually reeling it pretty fast, just like you would a spinnerbait. And they are, I don't know, 2 or 3 foot deep. I mean, as soon as it hits the water and I make a few cranks, they're hitting it. They're on the points, like, or that's where it seems like the bites are coming from. It's funny how you grab a bait and it's like the smallmouth like it, and you grab a different bait, largemouth like it. You got to find that bait that they both like. I just don't know how many largemouths up. I really think a lot of the fish are out here underneath bait, but it's just with the wind blowing like it is, it's so hard to get out there and look at them and stay on top of them. You know, a lot today. Basically, you know, the day kind of started off, I was wanting to catch them out under bait, and the wind just, it was a hassle to try to fish that way, so I started running wind. And you guys that fish, you know, you catch a few in the wind, then you start running it, and it's not as strong as it was, and just doesn't, I mean, I can tell it just doesn't feel right. I really just don't have a lot else to try to catch them. That's just, I mean, it blows my mind that it's dang near November and the water's still almost 70. I mean, typically by this time it's at least, you know, low 60s, 61, 62, and they're just biting. I mean, you can do a lot of other stuff, but, you know, if I had to do it over again, I've seen a lot of fish on, you know, that structure, you know, rock piles and brush piles in that like 10 to 15. You know, a guy might drag something around, but it's just hard this time of year because it's for me, it's never great in one spot. You just got to cover water and get them to bite. And I've had a decent amount of bites. I've missed more than I've caught, and that's kind of frustrating, but it's just the day whenever they're keying in on that little stuff. So I've learned something today. There's a reason that God made deer hunting, and that was because there's some days it's tough, and it's not, I mean, it's just the, you know, the conditions. Just the, you know, we've had that, like I said, that late summer, and it's just, I keep wanting to be shallow, and they're not. I mean, the bulk of them wants to be out there deeper, and they're hard to catch because they're eating a bunch of those little minnows. So, but the good thing is the guy can go tomorrow, and you know, it turned around completely. So, you know, I just clear water, you know, little baits, little line, and just cover a bunch of water. So we're gonna go, I think we're gonna go get in the deer stands. What we're gonna do the rest of the afternoon, but unless I catch one on that stump right there. I appreciate you guys riding along.